Nothing that Jessica and I talk about today is going to matter if you do not have trust. So how can you demonstrate trust? You can act in trusting ways. You can do things that demonstrate to your team that you trust them, like not micromanaging their work. The second thing is communication. When you are managing a remote team, it is important to over communicate, to use multiple modalities of communication. So not only our best friends, Zoom meetings and emails, but other in-person and asynchronous ways of communicating, whether that's recording videos, posting meeting notes, and also avoiding proximity bias. You want to make sure that everybody has equal access to information. If somebody is in your same time zone, if somebody maybe you see occasionally in the office, if you're a hybrid remote team, you want to make sure that everybody has the same equal access to information about the organization. The third is clear expectations. You're all evaluators, so you know all about setting clear expectations, but this is not letting just showing up to work or showing up to meetings demonstrate the value of an employee to your company. This is setting clear expectations so that people have metrics and can start working towards their goals of fulfilling whatever it is you're trying to accomplish with your evaluation projects. It's defining success. And then really it's leaving your people alone so that they can do their good work and have uninterrupted blocks of time to conduct data analysis and evaluation projects. Fourth thing is equipment. Unfortunately, many of us are still struggling with equipment malfunctions and issues, being able to share screens, being able to mute. So it's important to ensure that if you're managing a remote team, that they have access to good quality remote equipment. It is also helpful to have maybe a small design training so that you can set clear expectations for what backgrounds, attire, and other things that are visible on the screen look like. And other smaller design trainings like making sure that people are looking at their cameras. When you're presenting, you don't want to be doing this. I know it's really hard on Zoom, but it's much better if we're all facing the camera and looking at it. And the last thing is designating the difference between what's appropriate for in-person work and what's appropriate for remote work. So those of us that are working in hybrid remote teams, please do not ensure that you're promising the worst of both worlds. We do not want to force people to take a long commute to come into their office and sit and get on a Zoom meeting. So make sure that we're really defining what is the purpose of in-person work for. Is it to build team bonding and cohesion? Is it to conduct meetings together and making sure that people have time remotely to do the deep work and thinking that they need to do? I'll hand it off to Jessica.
Awesome. And so the angle I'm coming in, that's just to give you some context. I have a small consulting firm. There are 4 of us right now, and we are actually spread across 2 US states and Canada. So I have had to grapple with both having a remote team and all the things Becky just talked about, as well as sort of business implications of growing my team in that way. So if you look at the handout, you can get some of the detail and we can delve in wherever is of interest to you. I think that's what I'm more interested in. I grouped it into sort of 3 buckets of managing the human resources. So in addition to what all of the great points Becky just made, thinking about how you might formalize those expectations and policies, the benefit of clarity and writing it down and thinking it through yourself is just really valuable. Some of the challenges of offering benefits when you're working across jurisdictions, especially in the US, we're a patchwork, happy to talk about any issues there. Legal obligations, some of that United States patchwork comes into play here. They are all things you can grapple with and are worth grappling with. I really emphasize the point of employee versus contractor. They are not interchangeable, and it is a workers' rights issue. So I do get on that soapbox a little bit. Happy to talk about what that means. And then managing risk, which is really, again, planning ahead, thinking about onboarding, thinking about offboarding, and particularly thinking about securing equipment and information when it is in someone's home. That raises different risks and challenges. We deal with very private information in our work. In someone's home, you need to think about what your security procedures are and what do you do in the worst case scenario, because it's not the same as if it was in your office where you have control. So let's talk about whatever y'all are interested in on any of those topics.
I will say they have a chance to come back on January 19th and do this as a full IC topic chat, not the abbreviated 15-minute mode. So we'll have a full hour to talk about this on January 19th. So we're super excited to give them more chance to talk about this because I know this is an important topic to me too. I have
Are
a
there any
quick question.
questions or?
I do. Jessica or Becky, how do you do Christmas holiday gatherings remotely? Because Emily and I just had a long conversation about that this morning. How do you create community remotely?
You can tell Becky and I are looking at each other. I don't know if you might have a better answer. So I will give you a practical. In the past, we were smaller. There were 2 of us to start. And I kind of didn't, I was worried about mandatory fun, especially with just 2 of us, of me being like, you must hang out with the boss today. And so haven't, but this year we're bigger. And so I'm thinking about that right now myself. And I'm thinking of some kind of Zoom gathering, maybe where everyone has either tea, coffee, or a cocktail, whatever your preference is. And, you know, playing fun games. I would say do it at the end of the day on company time so that it isn't mandatory fun after hours with the boss. But you also need to know your team. I don't know, Becky, you probably have dealt way more with this.
Same amount. So I want to reiterate what Jessica just said, whether you're in person or remote, please avoid forced fun. And especially what the boss wants may not be what the employee wants. One thing I have found successful is to have a meeting where everybody can share a success or a goal. Like it's a real culture of positivity. Everyone can share something special, and that can be professional or personal. And then to give people the entire day off. So instead of trying to coordinate lots of things, sort of giving someone a surprise, like, here you go, you're off for the next 4 to 6 hours, right? People love free time off. So even if you have a flexible schedule, it's nice to know that you don't have work. One way that I literally try to accomplish this, though, is I will actually block time out. So, hey, we're having a strategic planning session, or we're having a holiday something, right? Whatever's going to work for your team. I've done this for employees before. I used to manage a team entirely of mothers with young children. Ironically, like 8 of them all had a child under the age of 4. And so making sure that I took that block time out and gave them the rest of the day off, ensured that they didn't have client meetings or other child obligations, and really had those 4 hours for themselves. So that's something that I found helpful. Not a big party person. So if anyone has any like remote party tips, I'm like, can we just stop? I don't want, I don't want my cocktail with my boss. So there's a question in the chat, and I will read it out loud so it gets on the recording. How do you handle equipment and software needs for contractors who do not have access to the needed tools? I will let you go first, Jessica, and then I'm happy to weigh in.
Yeah. I think that it's an important consideration. So that is one of the tests actually between an employee and a contractor, is that a contractor is supposed to provide their own tools. I have, if it's a platform, let's say like Deduce, I think is sort of a web-based qualitative coding, I would purchase them the license for whatever period they need to, if I want them using sort of my platform and existing in my space. But otherwise, other than a subscription to a platform where I might incorporate it into our work, generally they should be bringing. I don't know if there's specific ones you're thinking of in mind that I'm not imagining, but if I need them that integrated into our software, our program, I would be the one to probably purchase the license, but I would also start questioning whether they were in fact a contractor.
I will reiterate what Jessica said and say distinguish whether this is an employee or a contractor. One actual literal tool I like to use is SharePoint. It's HIPAA compliant, and you can set up different subsites. So you can make a public one and invite specific email addresses. So it's a little bit different than Dropbox or Box or Google Forms, and that you still have control over the privacy of it. But for just document editing and everybody being able to access the same document, I found it really helpful.
I think that's a good point. I think one of my collaborator organizations, so we are a legitimate contracting relationship, and I think they use SharePoint as one of the ways to share files with me securely so we could collaborate.
I was wondering if you could give some more examples about the communication challenges and how you've addressed those, or sort of approaches that you've taken to prevent some of those issues. One thing that I experience with my team is the proximity bias that you mentioned. So I'm glad to have a name for that now. That some of my team is located in the same city as our clients, and I am not. And so they have sometimes access to information and relationship building that I do not because I'm farther away.
So we've gotten a message that we need to start wrapping up. So we'll give the 15-second abbreviated version. Jessica, do you want to go first?
No, I think you should start, Becky. This is your wheelhouse, man.
Again, I would say first is clear expectations. So what's the protocol for communicating with the client? Do we wait a certain time period before we reply all or get access to the information? And again, how is that information being clearly shared? Email is one great medium. There are other mediums like message boards. You know, a lot of people use Trello. Feel free to keep going until everyone comes back in. The rooms don't close for another minute. Okay. Slow down my talking space. So also thinking about the difference between synchronous and asynchronous communication. Not every email or not every inquiry requires a, 2-minute response. It's okay to take a day until everybody gets on the same page with the communication. If a client is requesting immediate responses to emails, first of all, I don't really know if that's the best client, and maybe we need to reset some expectations that you all have a chance to do your deep work. We should not be checking our email every 6 minutes. But another thing is just setting reasonable expectations with the client on when you respond to make sure that everybody has the chance to weigh in on a response if it's something that affects the project.
And the only thing I might add to that in the specific example you shared is to have that chat with your team as well about like, I'm noticing, name the thing you're seeing. I noticed that this is happening. And so because you're closer, you're having these first, and sort of name the problem and work together to come up with a solution of how we might fix it, address it, and get you more included that that's the problem we're having here.
And I will read one more comment from the chat. I worked with different teams that use Slack and set up different communication channels, including some for fun. The teams loved it because they could chat in real time.